All these needs are being taken care of by this bonding with the or their family or their own mother or sister. The easy prey, the easy victim is always from the other side. The state, the society, it's the other person that is prey. And that's what we see in India is happening. And also the places. It's never the society. Where the main child is the love. And it is we mothers and sisters who reinforce the need of the child, of the male child, that all his needs, especially sexual and lust, are satisfied. But
I'm a Maitri University, and I'm a psychologist and always have been working on issues pertaining to women's lives. So there at the Medical University, we have a gender studies department and a psychology department, and I sort of operate in both of them. I'm missing Ishwar's presence here as also just because they would have brought a different kind of experience from what I'm going to be sharing. But I want to say, and I'll also move between Hindi and English. Abhi shuru mein zara English started off, but I think I'll be able to soon become bilingual. And I think that I must say that I'm very grateful that at least now we have reached a point where psychology and psychologists can be considered to be relevant in this whole domain. Because of course, and it's not entirely because that psychology as a discipline has not been at fault, but समस्या ये रही है कि बहुत सी बातें साइकोलॉजिस्ट ने ऐसी कही हैं जो कि फेमिनिस्ट पर्सपेक्टिव से बहुत दिक्कत करती थी, जैसे कि फॉर एग्जांपल विमेन्स नेचर के बारे में बात करना या ऐसी कई बातें कहना जो कि मतलब फेमिनिस्ट पर्सपेक्टिव से दिक्कत करती थी. तो इससे बहुत साल लगे फॉर पीपल टू बी एबल टू फील, एंड इवन नाउ आई थिंक इट्स अ रिलेटिवली स्मॉल ट्राइब एंड वेरी स्मॉल इन इंडिया who would like to see themselves as psychologists and feminists at the same time, and I happen to be one of them. So let me try and say what I would like to say about the problem of, I focused more on sexual violence, but I think what I'm saying applies to violence against women also, right? And of course we do know that very often there is violence and sexual violence can go together. It's not as if it's always just sexual violence or that there is violence. So there is, there's a lot of violence against women, and that starts from the moment, prior to birth quite often and goes on till the very end of your life, and this is something that everyone here knows. I do feel personally that there is a great need for psychologists in hospitals, in the courtrooms, in the police, and in all such spaces where women who have had experiences of violence actually find themselves the subject of interrogations of various kinds. And I think there psychologists can be of very great use. But perhaps to be able to say how a psychologist can be of use, we need to understand that psychology जो है वो बनती कैसे है एक इंसान की, जो एक औरत है जिसके साथ ये सब होता रहा है और जो इस समाज में रह रही है. बहुत सी बातें ऑलरेडी कही जा चुकी हैं, सो आई विल नॉट से देम अगेन एंड अगेन. बट अगर हम रेप के ही बारे में सोचें तो रेप हैज ऑलवेज बीन सीन एटलीस्ट इन आवर नॉर्थ इंडिया एज अ fate which is worse than death, right? Now that itself indicates that as a woman you are if you are raped, this is the ideology that prevails, that you have actually, what you've done, what has happened to you does not allow you to live any longer. And this whole ideology of Zinda Lash, which we have seen throughout. Now, so we have on the one hand this kind of a discourse, ये धारणा है हमारी की जो औरत जिसका बलात्कार हो चुका है। और मुझे याद है हम लोग जब छोटे थे तो ये बहुत ही ज्यादा हमको सुनने को मिलता था। अब कुछ धीरे धीरे करके इस तरह की बात कम से कम इस तरह के माहौल में कम हुई है। पहले तो बहुत ही ज्यादा ये सुनाई दिया करता था। और दूसरी तरफ से ये है कि जो तुम्हारे साथ हुआ है वो इसलिए हुआ है क्योंकि तुमने किसी लक्ष्मण रेखा को क्रॉस किया है, तुमने कुछ ऐसा किया है जिसकी वजह से, सो यू आर रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर अ फेट वर्स देन दैट। नाउ दिस इज समथिंग विच यू कैन इमेजिन कि अगर हम इस तरह की धारणाओं के बीच में पले बड़े हुए हैं तो ये धारणाएं कहीं ना कहीं हमारे अंदर भी होंगी। और फॉर्चुनेटली मैं ये नहीं मानती हूँ कि कोई भी औरत पूरी तरह से इन धारणाओं से ग्रस्त हो जाती है। There is always something in women or in everyone, but it's women, men, whoever we are talking about, which is resisting these social constructions. एक कहीं से आवाज अंदर से वो भी होती है जो ये जानती है कि ये बातें जो मैं ही सुन रही हूँ अपने अंदर से, उनके अलावा कुछ और भी सच हो सकता है। हमेशा शायद ये नहीं होता है पर अक्सर ये चीज भी होती है। और हमारा काम एज साइकोलॉजिस्ट ये है कि जो वुमन इस समय विक्टिम हो गई है उसको हम किसी तरह से सर्वाइवर हुड तक लाएं। और उस सर्वाइवर हुड तक लाने के लिए जो अजीब काम हमें ये करना होगा वो ये करना होगा कि हमें एक सेंस में वी विल हैव टू सी that this woman will be speaking in the voice of the social constructions. That is, she could very well be seeing herself as guilty. She could very well be seeing herself as ashamed. She could very well be seeing herself as someone who blames herself and who might be therefore in a state of depression. Because this happened to her, right? So like recently, for example, one girl came to me to speak to me. She's a young 18, 19-year-old girl. And she said, you know, मैंने बहुत बुरा काम किया है. So I said, क्या बुरा काम? Of course I knew what she was going to say, more or less. But still I thought, पता नहीं क्या बुरा काम किया है. So I said, क्या बुरा काम किया है तुमने? So she said that, you know, I was going out with this boy and I was really very happy with him. And we had been going out together for 6 months and then I had sex with him. So, and 2 days after having sex with me, he terminated the relationship. Now, the point is that, so of course I said, अच्छा, तुमने क्यों बुरा काम किया है इसमें, right? तुम्हें क्यों लग रहा है कि तुमने बुरा काम किया है? तुम अपनी तरफ से उसको, you were attracted, you liked him, you thought you were in a good relationship. Now, here I'm not saying that sex has to be in a relationship, but I'm talking about a particular girl, a particular context. Someone I was talking to, and I said, तुमने क्यों गलत काम किया? And I think it gave her a little bit of a relief, you know, कि गलत काम जो है वो मेरा नहीं है, it's the other person's mistake. But the point is, there are two things. One is that she's embedded in a community which knows about the fact that she has this physical relationship, and there is actually a lot of victimization that is going on as a result of that, right? There are people who are now approaching her and saying, "Arey, chal," right? There are guys who are approaching her and say, "Chal, right? And we want sex." And actually, she actually is too traumatized, and that's the last thing that she's interested in. So when we're talking about violence, you know, now, and when you talk about consent for that matter, and all these very, very tricky issues, of course she consented, right? But the problem that I'm trying to highlight is that the way the social constructions get internalized is that she knows that she isn't actually to blame, but there is a voice which is constantly coming to her, which is saying that I am at fault, I am unlovable, I am not likable, and etc., etc. She is getting into depression, she's losing interest in her studies, and so on, right? So there is therefore a psychological reality which gets constructed, which often reinforces the social construction. And I think the point which I want to, and so of course if I ask myself as a feminist, I would say what is the only appropriate response is anger, right? When something like this happens to you, or when you encounter violence on the streets of Delhi, which we do all the time, we should feel angry. That's the only right response. But unfortunately, we often may feel partly angry, but a lot of times women don't feel only angry when they find themselves the subject of sexual assaults of various kinds. They also feel deeply confused, and they feel deeply depressed also. And of course, all of the depression is not, part of it is because they don't know what to do with the fact that this has happened. There's a lot of fear in terms of whether they can go and take these matters outside or not, and what will happen when they do, and whether they can share it with the family, and whether the family will be able to accept it, or whether there will be more constraints imposed on them, and so on. But what I'm saying is that I do feel that we cannot easily imagine that the women who come and speak to us will be already speaking in the voice of feminism, right? Or they will not already speak in an ideological voice. They will instead very often speak in a voice that we need to take through a process of counseling to a position where they are able to understand that the fault is not theirs, and that in fact these are things that need to be acted against, and there needs to be, public outcries about them, and that you have to take legal action or whichever other kind of action that has to be taken. So I'm saying that unfortunately the psychological reality of women and the ideological beliefs that we have don't cohere with each other quite often. The second thing that I wanted to say is that, which also everyone has said, कि कोई भी ऐसी जगह नहीं है जो कि safe है women के लिए. चाहे वो उनका खुद का घर हो, चाहे वो बच्ची हो, चाहे वो बड़ी हो, चाहे वो शादीशुदा हो, चाहे वो काम कहीं करने के लिए जा रही हो ट्रांसपोर्ट लेकर के, चाहे वो पहुंच चुकी हो उस जगह में, और चाहे वो किसी ऐसी जगह में फंसी हुई हो जहाँ पे आर्म्ड कॉन्फ्लिक्ट वगैरह वगैरह चल रहा है. सो देयर इज नो स्पेस व्हिच इज सेफ. And as a result of that, I think a lot of women, and this was really true in our time, and I think the public outcry that took place this time was significant, क्योंकि इस तरह से उसमें ऐसा लगा कि कुछ औरतें कम से कम ये कहना चाह रही हैं कि देखो हम इस तरह की अनसेफ दुनिया को एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर सकते हैं, हम इसके खिलाफ जाना चाहते हैं. लेकिन जो लैक ऑफ सेफ्टी है वो बहुत ज्यादा है, और लड़कियों को सिखाया जाता है शुरू से कि तुम किसी तरह से डर के साथ रहो और अपने आप को बचा करके रहो. और ये जो डर है ये हमारे सेल्फ कॉन्सेप्ट में बहुत बड़ा डेंट क्रिएट कर देता है, क्योंकि डरा हुआ इंसान जो है वो हर जगह थोड़ा डरता ही रहता है. तो जो डर शुरू से सिखाया जाता है ये बहुत बड़ी समस्या है. और तीसरी चीज मैं कहना चाह रही थी कि शायद एज ए साइकोलॉजिस्ट मैं ये कहना चाहूंगी, हो सकता है ये थोड़ी प्रॉब्लमेटिक बात हो या हो सकता है आप लोगों को सही लगे, कि जो अलग अलग स्पेसेस हैं वेयर वायलेंस टेक्स प्लेस, they are from a psychological perspective I think very different spaces. So I would like to make a distinction in fact in the violence which happens in intimate spaces and the violence which happens with strangers. And we know that the statistics show that a lot of violence